This podcast is dedicated to people who are ready to take ownership of what it means to be born with high sensory intelligence and how to bring it into service for business, career, and organizations globally. Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you once again for joining me here on another episode of the High Sensory Intelligence podcast with me, Willow McIntosh, founder of Illuminance and leader of the High Sensory Intelligence movement. And I don't know what it is, whenever I sit down to do a podcast episode, I always feel like I'd like to burst into song. But it could be quite annoying for listeners not expecting that, so I shall refrain today, at least. And actually that fits in quite well with what I'd like to discuss and talk about today, and that is around our relationship with playfulness, joy, and the fun of being a high sensory intelligent person. And actually, the importance of this is around recognizing that our purpose, role, and meaningful work in the world, as people in general, is always based in fun and play, essentially. Even if we are doing what appears to be quite serious work in the world, if we are coming from a place of real purpose and meaning, then there's going to be a great deal of joy in us doing that work. And as high sensory intelligent people, because I'm speaking to so many of you wonderful people on a daily basis, one of the areas that I notice we do struggle with a lot is taking ourselves so incredibly seriously. And much of that is around the issue of perhaps being misunderstood as children, and the fight that we tend to find ourselves in to prove ourselves to the world, prove ourselves to ourselves, and proving that we are worthy and of value. Now, there is actually some beautiful gold in that process, because a lot of the time in our own journey of finding our value and our purpose and our meaning in life is often the area of expertise that we are skilled at and very good at helping others to find their way and their transformation within that. In other words, sometimes our ideal clients are in fact people who we know we can help through anxiety and through self-doubt and help them to find their confidence and alignment and come into service in the world. So it's never to judge or to frame our journey from what can be sometimes victim into empowerment as a bad journey. Actually, that our journey, you'll often hear me saying, is a very important part of the recognition of our area of speciality, of our area of expertise. However, it's not to say that we need to be in this place of fear and pity and concern if that's our line of expertise as a high sensory person. Actually, it is about us finding our sense of joy and happiness in the work that we do, and it is very much a vibrational alignment to our inner place of peace and joy inside of us. And actually the core of ourselves, the inner driving force that sits behind everything, our soul, if you like, is sitting in joy. It's here to do its work through us in an environment and in an energetic container of joy. And so from that place of awareness, we find that life flows from a place of ease for us. Things work much better when we are in an intention of fun and play and joy, and to consider that we are here to raise vibration on the world. We are here to help people. We're here to heal. We're amazing consultants and healers and coaches. And at the end of the day, whatever it is, whatever context we are working in, our outcome is always to improve the quality of other people's lives. It's to help them to feel happier within themselves in whatever way that we do that work. And that is an incredible mission to be involved with. And the more that we can recognize our own place of joy and play within our own hearts, we are of much better use for the people that we are serving. And the way in which we can do that, and a process that I have found to be so useful, is to learn to identify with our bodies and our hearts and the feelings that we have of empowerment which reside in our bodies. Because as high sensory people, we're processing sensory data at such an intense rate. I'll say that differently. We're processing sensory data at a much deeper level. That's actually the biological difference, one of the biological differences that we have to people that are not born with the trait. In other words, when we are receiving sensory data, the way that we are cognitively processing that sensory data is happening at a much deeper level. And that's what gives us the skills and gifts and abilities that we have. But also what happens is if we are focusing on the full self version of ourselves, where we are reliant on other people's view of us or other people's judgment of us to try to find our place in the world, then we are going to process that so deeply that we actually tend to identify with what our thoughts are making up rather than the real identification of who we know we are inside. So the more work that we do with ourselves and the more we get feedback from the world that we're very good at what we do as high sensory people, and we get transformation and we make amazing coaches. And as I say again on a regular basis, is we must get out there and just practice being in service, and we will find our flow and we will experience for ourselves that people really benefit from our skills as high sensory people. So as that progresses, we learn more and more to identify with the truth of us. We identify that we are here with a great deal of value and an amazing set of abilities that are of great use in the world. The trouble being that as we're growing up, much of the time that's not recognized. It's very difficult. If we don't have the right training and we're not understood in the right way as children, as high sensory people, then what we tend to do is create a false version of ourselves that we think is going to be accepted by society. It's why a lot of us struggle with perfectionism. So if we keep everything in order around us, then we're not going to be found out or we're not going to be questioned too deeply. The trouble is whilst that's happening, we are identifying with a version of ourselves that we think other people want to see. We think that's going to make us happy. We think it's going to make them happy, and as a result, it'll make ourselves happy. So essentially, we're people pleasing in order to feel safe. The trouble is with that, if I say it again in a different way perhaps, is because we're processing so deeply, we are identifying with that false version. So we think that that is the real version of ourselves. And that version of ourselves is steeped in fear. It is created from a place of fear in order to try to find a way to be loved. When we identify with that version of ourselves, that's what causes us to fall into doubt, self-doubt, lack of confidence in ourselves. We're not seeing our value and we're deeply out of alignment with who we really are. So the pathway back into that has to be a conscious alignment with the power that's in our bodies. So the energetic body for us, where our hearts reside, the energy of our hearts reside, where the energy of our very soul resides, is accessed through the grounding sensations within our bodies. It's how we engage with the energy centers within our body. Of course, we have an energy center in our mind, but if we are not accessing the higher consciousness that's available in our minds and we are focusing on the lower vibration in our minds, we're going to be totally at the mercy of our full self. And that for us is a bad place to be. And unfortunately, it's why over 50% of high sensory people in the Western world are in depression. So our role as coaches and consultants and healers is not only to help other high sensory people to recognize their gifts and abilities and to shift this focus from the false self into the true self. It's also about us doing that as well. And it's remembering that we are just as valuable as anyone else. And this constant fight to try to work out who we are and where we are is going to be an endless battle. It has to be we just have to stop that habit. We have to stop that habit pattern. We have to stop the habit pattern of giving our identity to other people around us, what other people judge us to be. There has to be a consistent connection with our sense of self within ourselves. And that comes through an acknowledgement of knowing. So all of us, no matter what our circumstances are, no matter what our conditioning has been through our lives, there is a place of knowing within us that is untainted by anything that ever happens to us. It is an awareness of who we know we really are in terms of how we see the world, how we perceive the beauty in the world around us. There's going to be a part of life that is very, very important to us, a cause that we take very, very seriously. And when we look at our journey, we will see that actually, yes, there is this lineage of information that has trained us to become an expert in a particular area. So by utilizing these pieces that we know are true and unique to ourselves, we start to use those as reference points in order to be able to gain this sense of knowing within ourselves. Our sense of knowing is based in our core. It's in the seat of us. It's right there. We're born with it. We know who we are. We know what we're here to do. And it's about questioning the line of thought that we find ourselves in. When we find ourselves down the dark rabbit hole of despair, we have to ask ourselves, is this line of thought right now actually true? Is it actually real? What is it that I am basing my sense of self on right now? That's a good question. Am I basing my sense of self right now on what other people are thinking of me? Am I basing my sense of self on the experience that I had as a child? Am I basing this current line of thinking on something that just isn't true? And by learning to question our thought processes, we will come to realize that it is simply that. It is just a thought process. It's just a rabbit of association that we are chasing down a hole. And again, because we have the capacity to process so deeply, we make things feel very, very real for ourselves, and we end up putting our sense of identity onto that thought process. We really have to be aware of that, and it's a habit that we must learn to break. We must learn to stop identifying with I want to say lineage again. It is like a lineage of thought process that it's the habit of finding ourselves in the same hole on a regular basis. We have to stop that. We have to stop that. We have to make a conscious decision in our hearts to focus on what we know is real about ourselves. And we can start to, with the help of facilitation, I firmly believe that all of us as coaches and consultants, we should be in some kind of facilitation with someone who's a little bit further along the path of the awareness of high sensory intelligence than we are. I'm a firm believer of that. I feel that all coaches should be in coaching ourselves. We should all be being mentored as we are mentoring, because it helps us to evolve and it helps us to develop. We need the awareness of someone else in order to be able to really see where we need to shine the light of our awareness in order for the healing process to begin. And there is no end to that process. The journey of the soul is on a continuous process of evolution. There is no end goal, certainly not in this dimension. So it is about us. It is about us. Yes, being in our own process of healing, but it's also very much around this this invitation that I have for you guys to start to focus on what you know about yourself, what you know to be true. What is the truth? What are the core pillars of truth that you can use as a reference and as a focus point? From those places of truth, that's where we start to access the reality of fun and play for us. Actually, what I just wanted to say there was, through that process of knowing what's true, we can access what we know to be true in ourselves using the process of what's real. And that's where our bodies and the connection with our bodies is so helpful and so essential, because that is real for us. The body is sitting in the moment. It's connected with the heart and the soul. That is a reference of reality for us. The thought processes that are spinning out of control, they're not sitting in reality. Yes, of course, we have inspired thought, and we have aligned thought that comes as a result of our bodies and our cells being in alignment in the moment. Yes, then of course we have aligned thought. But if we are completely disconnected from the moment and disconnected from our grounding, then our thoughts are just going to take us who knows where. So if we are choosing to identify with that as real, that's when we end up in a pickle. So coming back to what we know is true and what is real, in the reality and the wisdom of our bodies and in the moment, from there we start to access what is actually a profound simplicity of joy within us. That profound simplicity of joy is connected to our purpose here. Our very essence wants to be of service here. We are all here to be of service in some way. We are all here to make change and transformation in the world in our unique way. None of us are here to simply be of gain for our own personal benefit. That's just not how life is wired. We are interconnected. We are here to be of service. We are energetically interconnected with the greater whole, the greater context. When we try to isolate ourselves from that, it just causes misery. There's no case of anyone that has focused on making billions and billions and piles of money to go and sit in a castle by themselves and expecting that sitting in a pile of money is going to make them happy. Anything that's just purely for our own personal gain doesn't bring us happiness. It's just not how the world is wired. We are here to be of service. So when we understand that as a truth, and we are accessing the reality of who we are in the grounding of ourselves, in the grounding of our bodies, then all of a sudden this natural awakening to our inner sense of joy emerges. And when we then take the step to utilize that awareness of joy into service for the benefit of others, that's when it all starts to make sense. So my invitation for you guys this week is to remember that joy and fun and play is a very, very important part of our development and awareness as high sensory people. It's from that place that we do our best work, in whatever context that work is. If we are feeling joy and play in what we do, it's a great indication we're on the right path. Joy and play are an excellent indicator of where we should be heading. The feeling of joy, the feeling of connection, that is an excellent reference point, accessed through the body of truth into the identification of what's real and the awareness of our value, our gifts, and just how important we are here in the world. Thank you so much again for listening. Can't wait to see you next time. If you have any questions, please do reach out to us. And wherever you may be, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now. Join me on the next masterclass where I'll show you how to reveal your own high sensory intelligence, bringing you into alignment with your true purpose, career, business, and personal success. To register your place today, visit highsensoryintelligence.com.